I was in Berlin for an art residency when my parents sold my studio to fund my brother's startup. When I came back, scaffolding wrapped the building like a cage, and my walls were already coming apart. "You can paint anywhere," my mother said. I smiled. "What's funny?" they snapped. I said quietly, "The studio you sold was actually—" And that's when they started screaming. My name is Addison. I'm 31, and for most of my adult life, my address was a third-floor loft in an old factory block that used to smell like rust and wet concrete. Then the city discovered charm. The alleyways got string lights. The warehouses turned into galleries. The rent turned predatory. My loft wasn't a flex. It was a scar and a sanctuary. It belonged to my grandpa before it belonged to me, my grandpa the painter, my grandpa who raised me after my grandmother died, and my parents became a pair of busy silhouettes. He taught me how to stretch canvas tight enough to sing when you tapped it. He taught me that silence can be a weapon if you aim it right. He taught me to look at a blank wall until it stopped feeling like a threat. When he died, he left me the loft. Not because it was valuable, though later it became that, but because it was mine in a family where mine always meant temporary. In my family, my brother Samuel is the future. He's been about to break through since college. Always one investor away, one pitch away, one miracle away. My parents talk about him like he's a sunrise they personally scheduled. I'm the other thing, the talented but unstable daughter, the one whose success is treated like an interesting accident. My exhibitions are nice. My commissions are fun. My work is a phase that lasted long enough to make them uncomfortable. And the arrangement was simple. I earned, I helped. I didn't ask for too much. I was useful. I was tolerated. Berlin broke that spell. For 3 months I was anonymous. No one asked me to be practical. No one called to borrow my competence. I painted until my wrists ached and my chest felt open. I started a series I'd been afraid of for years. Work about inheritance, about being loved only when you're convenient, about rooms that remember. I flew home with charcoal under my nails and a stupid, hopeful plan. Finish the series in my loft, in the light my grandpa used to chase across those windows. The taxi turned onto my street and my brain refused to believe what my eyes saw. Scaffolding, metal poles and netting, like my building had been wrapped for shipping. Men in hard hats moved like they owned the sidewalk. A dumpster squatted out front with broken drywall and splintered wood piled inside like bones. I got out before the driver fully stopped. The front door was propped open with a bucket. Inside, the hallway looked skinned. Mailboxes removed, posters stripped, paint scraped down to pale rectangles. The air tasted like dust. "Can I help you?" a man called. He had a tablet in one hand and the kind of calm you only get when you have permission. "I'm Addison," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Unit 3C, that's my studio." He tapped the screen. 3C, he repeated. "Full renovation. Your items were moved to storage. New owners started demolition yesterday." New owners. The words hit like cold water. "I didn't sell," I said. He gave me a look that was polite and final. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I just worked the schedule." My phone buzzed. "Mom." "Don't dramatize. We made a reasonable business decision. Samuel needed capital, proof of assets for a closing round. You can paint anywhere. I read it twice." My throat tightened until it felt like I'd swallowed sand. I called, because some stupid part of me still believed in misunderstandings. Dad answered first. "Addison," he said, like I was late for dinner. "You're back." "Did you sell my studio?" I asked. A pause. Not shock. Not guilt. Just irritation, like I'd asked him to explain a bill. "It was an investment," he said. "For the family. For Samuel," I said. "Don't do that," he warned. Mom cut in, voice smooth as a knife. "You're spiraling." "I'm standing in front of my building," I said. "They're ripping it apart." "And you'll be fine," she said, bright and certain. "You always are. You can paint anywhere." I heard Samuel in the background, laughing at something. That sound did something ugly to me. "Put him on," I said. He took the phone like he was doing me a favor. "Addison," he said, already tired. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Like what?" I asked. "With my walls in a dumpster?" "I needed liquidity," he said, like he'd swallowed a pitch deck. "Timing mattered. It's not personal. It's a space." "It's my grandpa," I said. "It's a room," he corrected, sharper now. "And you don't even use it efficiently. I'm building something scalable. Investors don't wait for feelings. I waited for my mother to scold him for being cruel. She didn't. Silence is an answer. I hung up. That night, I didn't cry. I couldn't. Anger held me upright like a spine I hadn't known I had. I called Maya. Maya wasn't a friend I drank with. She was a lawyer I'd met through a collector who liked art and lawsuits with equal appetite. Maya dealt in facts. She didn't flinch at tears, but she didn't feed them either. "Send me everything," she said. "Texts, emails, anything you have that shows how they presented the sale. And don't talk to them without me." In her office the next morning, she read my documents with the slow attention my parents never gave me. "There's a problem with the way this was sold," she said. "What kind of problem?" My stomach sank before she finished. "Not a use covenant," she said, like she was correcting a misconception I hadn't even had. "It's split ownership. Your grandpa set it up years ago." I blinked. "Split? How?" "The building shell and the unit interior are legally separate," Maya said, tapping the page. "The developer can buy the building, the HOA can control common structure. But the interior improvements, the studio build-out, the airspace rights tied to Unit 3C, those belong to you, separately. They're not theirs to convey." I stared at her. "So, my parents couldn't sell it?" "They could sell what they thought was the studio, the shell interest, the line on a brochure," she said. "But they couldn't sell the part that has value. Not without you." Maya pulled the recorded sale packet. My signature was on it. Not mine, but close enough to pass through people who process paper like fast food. Worse was the attached letter, typed, formal, poisonous. It described me as an eccentric artist with a history of instability, unable to manage assets responsibly, requiring family oversight. I sat there, reading myself being turned into a liability, not a daughter, a problem with a solution. "They didn't just steal," I said. My voice sounded far away. "They tried to erase me." Maya's eyes were steady. "They tried to make you disposable," she said. "That's intent." Then she did what my family never did. She acted like what happened to me mattered. We filed an emergency motion, a stop work request, fraud allegations. Notice to the developer that the interior rights weren't conveyed. Notice that any continued demolition risked damages for destruction of property not owned by the buyer. By afternoon, my mother called 12 times. I let it ring. The old me would have answered to keep the peace. The new me watched the phone like it was a snake. 2 days later, they showed up at my temporary rental like they were arriving to correct an employee. Mom walked in without asking. Dad hovered behind her, eyes tired. Samuel stood with his phone in his hand like he wanted proof I was being unreasonable. "You look awful," Mom said. "Thanks," I replied. Sarcasm was the only thing keeping my hands from shaking. "We need to talk like adults," she said. "You forged my signature," I said. Dad flinched. Samuel looked away for half a second, fast, guilty. Mom didn't blink. "We did what we had to do." "For Samuel," I said. "For the family," she corrected, as if that made it holy. Samuel stepped forward, impatience leaking. "The injunction is spooking people," he said. "This is affecting my runway. I have a round closing. I need assets on paper. I need stability." "My walls are in a dumpster," I said. "But sure, your runway." He scowled. "Stop making everything emotional. We'll get you a new studio, better one." "A replacement," I said. "Like you're buying me a new history." Mom's jaw tightened. "You're sentimental. That's your weakness." There it was again. How they labeled whatever in me didn't serve them. "You can paint anywhere," she said, slow and scolding. "You don't need that building." I looked at her and felt something snap into clarity. They weren't confused. They weren't sorry. They were only annoyed that I was resisting. Maya told me to meet them at the site. Not for closure, for positioning, for witnesses, for the moment that would turn their story inside out. The sky was gray when we met under the scaffolding. The netting shivered in the wind like a cheap curtain trying to hide a crime. Mom stared at the building like it offended her. "Look," she said, "it's progress. You should be grateful." Samuel's eyes were red-rimmed. "Stress, not remorse." "Just call this off," he said. "We can fix it. Please, Addison." "Please," from him, sounded like a demand wearing a softer shirt. Mom turned to me, irritated. "Stop enjoying this." I almost laughed. Almost. She repeated her favorite line, like a spell. You can paint anywhere. I smiled. Samuel snapped. What's funny? That question, sharp, suspicious, finally felt honest, because they could smell a shift in power and it terrified them. I said quietly, the studio you sold was actually... And I stopped. Silence is pressure. Let it build. Mom's eyes widened. Finish, she hissed. Maya stepped forward with a folder and held out one page, not dramatic, surgical. Your parents didn't sell what they think they sold, Maya said. This transaction doesn't convey Unit 3C's interior rights. It doesn't convey the studio build-out. It doesn't convey the airspace rights tied to the unit. Those belong to Addison alone. For one perfect second, nobody spoke. Then Samuel's face drained. Interior rights? Mom laughed, brittle. That's not a thing. It is, Maya said. And if your contractor keeps tearing out what you don't own, we add destruction and conversion. Dad's voice came out small. Addison, we didn't know. You didn't read, I said. You didn't care enough to read. I finished the sentence, calm as a knife sliding in. Never belonged to you to sell. And that's when they started screaming. Mom first, raw, furious sound like she could scare the law away. You did this to punish us, she shrieked. You're jealous. You've always been jealous. Samuel grabbed his hair, voice cracking into panic. Fix it, he said. Addison, fix it. Call them. Tell them it's fine. Tell them what? I asked. That you're entitled to my life? He stepped closer, wild-eyed. You owe me. You always help. Mom jabbed a finger at my chest. You're selfish, she spit. You're ruining your brother. I looked at her and heard my grandpa in my head, soft as peppermint. Silence can be a weapon, so I used it. I let their words hang in the dust. I let the workers hear. I let the site manager stare. I let the developer's representative, who'd arrived mid-screaming, watch my family unravel like a cheap seam. Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Any further contact goes through my office, she said. Approach Addison again and we add harassment. The forged signature is criminal. The sale is defective. Work on the interior is frozen. Frozen. That word landed like a gavel. Before the court date, I went to the storage unit the foreman mentioned. It was on the edge of town, a maze of roll-up doors and fluorescent hum, the kind of place where people hide divorces and dead relatives in cardboard boxes. A clerk slid a key across the counter without looking at my face. Unit 48B, sign here. Inside, my life sat stacked like luggage. Canvases wrapped in plastic. Crates labeled in black marker. My grandpa's old wooden stool wedged between a stranger's abandoned dresser and a box of someone's Christmas lights. The stool had a gouge in the seat from when I was 12 and dropped a palette knife. My first tiny crime, my first lesson that accidents leave evidence. I put my hand on the wood, and finally, my body let me feel it. Not the big cinematic grief, the smaller, nastier kind. The kind that makes your eyes burn and your jaw lock, because crying feels like surrender. Mom called while I was standing there. Of course she did. I answered that one. Not because I owed her, but because I wanted to hear the temperature of her voice now that consequences had shown up in the driveway. She didn't say hello. Maya is threatening your father, she snapped. She's naming your choices, I said. This is insanity, Mom hissed. We were trying to save your brother. By selling me, I said. A pause, then that weaponized softness. Honey, please, you're taking this too far. I looked at the stool, at the dried paint trapped in its grain like fingerprints. Too far was forging my name, I said. Dad's voice came on, low and tired. Addison, we're your parents. No, I said. You're people who had access. Samuel grabbed the phone, loud, frantic. I can't lose everything, he blurted. This round collapses without collateral. This is my life. Just sign something. Tell them you approve. We'll make it up to you. Make it up, I repeated, almost amused. With what? With another lie? He swallowed hard, and for the first time I heard fear without arrogance underneath it. Addison, please! The old me would have softened. The old me would have heard that please and rushed to be the person who fixes things. I didn't. I couldn't. Not after seeing my signature turned into a costume. I'm hanging up, I said. If you call again, it goes through Maya. At the hearing, my parents sat behind their attorney in clothes that screamed respectability. Mom kept her chin lifted like she was being wronged by the concept of rules. Dad looked like he'd aged a decade in a week. Samuel couldn't sit still. His knee bounced like a metronome for panic. Maya didn't perform. She laid out facts like bricks, the split ownership, the forged signature, the defamatory letter about my instability, and the timeline showing the sale was pushed to meet Samuel's deadline. The judge's face didn't change, but his questions got colder as the minutes passed. When he granted the stop work order, Samuel's whole body sagged like someone had cut a string holding him upright. Outside the courthouse, Mom tried one last time. She stepped into my path, eyes glossy. "You're doing this because you hate us," she whispered. I looked at her carefully, like I was finally seeing the structure of her. "No," I said. "I'm doing this because I finally love me more than your approval." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Then her expression sharpened into something ugly and familiar. "You always had to be dramatic," she spit, turning away as if I was a stranger who'd inconvenienced her. Maybe I was. And maybe that was the first healthy thing I'd ever been in that family. A few weeks later, the sale was officially unwound, at least the part that could be. The developer negotiated to salvage the shell project, but the interior rights stayed where they'd always been, with me. The forgery investigation took on its own life. Samuel's investors stopped taking his calls. My parents started speaking in the language of consequences for the first time in their lives. And the city, through a program my grandpa had quietly partnered with, offered me stewardship of the space I'd built my work in. Not ownership the way a greedy person means it. Responsibility, authority. A key that didn't depend on anyone's approval. The first time I walked back into my loft, it didn't feel like home. The walls were scarred. The floor was bare. The light still arrived, stubborn as ever, cutting through dust and landing on the spot where my easel used to stand. I stood in the middle of the wreckage and waited for grief to swallow me. Instead, I felt something steadier. They hadn't destroyed my life. They destroyed an illusion, the one where I kept earning my place in my own family by paying for it. I pulled a piece of charcoal from my bag. My fingers didn't shake. I found a fresh panel of drywall that hadn't been painted yet and drew the first line. Dark. Certain. Unapologetic. They wanted to turn this place into capital. I turned it back into meaning. And if there's a moral, it's this. The moment your family sees you as a resource, they stop being family the second you stop being useful. That moment hurts like hell, until you realize it's also the first moment you finally belong to yourself.